Hey everybody, I hope you're doing well and welcome back to Whiskey Wanders. And you know what? Thank you all for taking the time to check out these little videos that I put out. And it's great to have you all a part of this small but growing community of whiskey lovers here on the Whiskey Wanders YouTube channel. And I really hope that that you enjoy these videos. And I just want to let you all know that I have been working on the camera work. So I don't know if you noticed, but it's not perfect yet. And if you see my last videos, it's never been my strong suit. But I do appreciate you paying attention and and you all being super patient with me on that a lot. So now today I'm in the Los Angeles Costco in the north again in Van Nuys, which is an area that is called the San Fernando Valley, and I think it's called that because, well, I mean that's the name of it. Oh, you know what? Actually, there's a mission in the valley that's named San Fernando, so I think that's might be named after. You know what? That might be what Los Angeles is named after. Either way, it's a good Costco to find some rare and hard to find and hard to get whiskeys on occasion, but usually it will always have a healthy supply of everyday staple types of whiskeys mixed in there, especially some of those ones at 1.75 liters. So today in the strip, we're going to see the Bulleit Rye, which is the one with the green label, not the bourbon one. Johnnie Walker Blue, which is probably one of the most well-known status whiskeys in the world. And Buchanan's Deluxe 12, which is kind of an under-the-radar favorite of some communities out there. So I think that's going to be pretty good. Now, before we get to it, though, if you like these little videos of me whiskey shopping at Costco, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That way you get updates when my newest videos get put up. So thanks again, and let's get down to it. Now, the first whiskey we're going to review today is this Bulliet Rye. And I think this is one of the first whiskeys that I've tried, at least back in the day, that I ever noticed a big difference between the bourbon and the rye version. I mean, I guess when you're real young, the reason for drinking whiskey tends to be a lot different than when you're a full adult. And by that I mean the taste isn't usually the main pursuit, right? It's the feeling that it gives you when you drink enough or too much, I guess. Either way, this Bulliet is kind of a prestige whiskey. At least when you see it at a bar, it's always presented very kind of nicely, and it stands out, and it kind of has an old-timey cowboy bar feel to it. Something you would hit the guy over in a cowboy bar fight. One of those ones. And I guess, when I think about it, it's probably really trying to do what Maker's Mark did maybe like 5 or 10 years ago and be this hip and cool new type of whiskey. But to me, for some reason, it just seems to be falling flat. It definitely is widely available and is distilled by MGP, which is the Midwest Grain Producers, as well as the Lawrenceburg Distillers out of Indiana. The 95 on the bottle, it says 95 right there on the bottle, and it stands for the 95% rye that it uses in its mash bill. The cost for it here at Costco for the 1.75 liter bottle is at $37.99, which again puts it in the same general price range as Maker's Mark or the Woodford Reserve. Now, for the high and low prices that you would find on the street shelf price, the high end, it comes out to $59.99. While on the low side, you can also find it for as low as $48.99. So when you average those two out, put together, it comes out to a street shelf price average cost at $54.49. This also means that if you end up buying it at Costco, you end up saving $16.50, or that comes out to around 30.28%. The ABV on it is very centerline at 45%, and I guess that's pretty good for my taste, but, it's a little low. It'll do, though, in a pinch. And the tasting notes specifically mention flavors like sweet vanilla, caramel, brown sugar, red licorice, an astringent, briny rye, and a thin mouthfeel. Now, the review on it are decent at 84.5 points, but it does mention that some detraction from this score is the wateriness of the whiskey and the fact that it flat out is a fair to middling whiskey, but doesn't seem to excel at anything in particular. So, in conclusion, this one, again, it's going to be a pass for me. I think it's just because my whiskey collection, I want to keep it growing and put in kind of whiskeys that are interesting or great or have, something to talk about to them. And this one just doesn't seem that interesting. And I really don't need a middling whiskey without much personality to be thrown in the mix. I mean, I already got a couple of those. Now, the next whiskey that I'm going to talk about today is a whiskey that needs no introduction. I mean, basically, if you've ever had a birthday, if you've gotten a promotion, if you had a big event in your life or been at an airport and you are a whiskey drinker, you would have come across this prestige blended scotch, which is Johnnie Walker Blue. The bottle, the whiskey, and even the taste are all an icon of what luxury scotch is supposed to be, and it's accessible at basically every corner of the earth to boot. Now, allegedly, according to Johnnie Walker, only 1 out of every 10,000 barrels in the Johnnie Walker stocks are deemed good enough to be used to make this Johnnie Walker Blue, which even at that ratio doesn't necessarily make it a small batch by any means. It's a blended whiskey that contains other whiskeys like Clonish, Cardihu, and Benrines single malts, and is arguably one of the most affordable everyday celebratory whiskey, although it has noticeably gone up in price in these last couple years. Now, that being said, the cost here at Costco is at $179.99, which is considerably less than what you would find on the high and low street shelf price. Also, the high price on the one is out of control depending on where you're looking and depending where you've been. So I kind of threw out those ones that were just obnoxiously high and put in the average ones, like the reasonably high ones. So this one's at $275.99 on the high side and $199.99 on the low side. So to make the average price come out to $237.99. So if you do end up getting it at Costco at the Costco price, then you would end up saving $58 in cash, about $58, or 24.37% off the average street shelf price. The ABV on it is set at 40%, which is, of course, very underpowered, but again, I usually often like to think of it as classic. And the tasting notes on it mention things like sweet apples, pears, vanilla, wafer cookies, yeasty notes, and with absolutely no burn, which sounds about right from recollection and makes it perfect for non-whiskey drinkers to enjoy as well, because there's none of that burn that puts some folks off. The reviews in general give it 86.2 points, which I think is a bit low for how good it really is, at least flavor-wise. But on the other side of that, I think it's also a victim of its own success. It's everywhere-ness, basically. Usually, on the highest shelf behind the bar, means that it would be impossible for any whiskey to really live up to the hype that the Johnnie Walker Blue actually gets. And I just think that'd be impossible. I mean, it's the kind of thing that you would expect to drink on a first-class flight or at a fancy lounge or, again, if you had some sort of big event in your life. So I think oftentimes people expect it to be more because of when you drink it, and that kind of injures the actual points against how good it actually is. So that being said, in conclusion, I didn't buy this one, but to be fair, I do have 2 bottles of it in the cabinet, and well, as my whiskey journey has kind of gone off on a tangent, I just haven't really gotten back to drinking any of the Johnnie Walker Blue. But I think it'd be really interesting to come back to it and compare it against some of the newest whiskeys that I've gotten and that I've experienced, and see if maybe the flavor is different than I recall as I've moved along this whiskey journey. Now, last but not least today is this Buchanan's Deluxe 12. This is a type of whiskey that is interesting because it's found its niche market in like some varieties of music that are really popular in Mexico, like in the communities and cultures around them. So, if you end up going to a Mexican food restaurant or a grocery store or even a taco shop, if they can sell liquor, that is, they will almost always have this whiskey. It's named after its founder, James Buchanan, who was actually born in Canada, but eventually returned to the UK after he was born and ended up growing up there. He started the James Buchanan & Co. company in 1884, and in a little bit more than a decade, he got a royal warrant in 1898 to supply the royal household of Queen Victoria. So that's pretty interesting, right? It went through a couple of hands over the years and was eventually bought out, like many of them, circle the drain, by the liquor behemoth Diageo in 1997. Now, the price for the 1.75 liter here at Costco is set at $49.99, which puts it in the mid-range whiskey range, even at the 1.75 liter, but it seems like an overall under-recognized brand. The high and the low price on it are set at $59.99 on the high side and $55.79 on the low side, which ends up making the average street shelf price at $57.89. So it's not that big of a difference from the high and the low. So if you do end up buying this handle at Costco, it'll mean that you'll save around $7.90, which is not a lot, but I guess still better than paying full price. I guess you got to factor in the cost of the Costco membership, but yeah, it also comes out to 13.65% in savings. The ABV on it is at 40%, so it's definitely good for putting in mixed drinks. Or I guess the best way to say it is that it is a flavor that is best paired with some sort of mixer. That being said, the tasting notes on it, the tasting notes are actually pretty brutal. It mentioned that it has flavors that are reminiscent of flat 7-Up. That would be the soda, or the pop for you folks in the Midwest. Caramelized onion, which obviously sounds off for whiskey, sweet grains, and grapefruit. So, it's not exactly what you would expect out a whiskey, and doesn't necessarily sound really that good. The reviews gave it 72.8 points, so obviously the reviewers had a similar reaction to it, because the score is pretty bad, especially when considering for a similar price you could get a Maker's Mark 1.75 or a Woodford Reserve or a Maker's 46, maybe, I guess, or even something like that. So those tend to get way better scores for the price. So this one is definitely going to be a skip for me. I know there's folks out there who live and die by it. It just doesn't seem like it's my thing, and I would definitely skip on this one. So, on conclusion, skip. All right, so that's it for today's whiskey wandering at Costco in Van Nuys, and I want to say thank you all so much again for watching to the very end. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please don't forget to like and subscribe. That way you can get notified when my newest videos get put up. Also, don't forget, if you see a whiskey that you love, just buy it. Because if you don't, somebody else surely will. And it might even be me. So have a great rest of your day. I'm out, and adios.